Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. Today, we are going to be talking about unmasking the hidden truth. Does your PMDD partner have depression? So I know so many times when we think about depression, because I know that's one of the symptoms that comes up with a lot of PMDD partners. I know I suffer from it on a monthly basis, and it's not all month, but I definitely have certain periods in the month where my depression is really bad. I go into crying spells. I feel really sad about things. And so we're always talking about how much depression goes into the partner that is suffering with PMDD. But today we are going to be talking about whether your partner who doesn't suffer with PMDD has depression and how that can impact your PMDD relationship. So I know that a couple of months ago, I released an episode about seasonal depression, which is something that my PMDD partner suffers with. And I was telling you how I discovered it and how it was kind of, we kept having arguments and fights and conflicts and all of these things. And then I realized, oh my goodness, my partner has seasonal depression. So this is the answer to everything. Well, we are now in another season and my partner is still depressed. And I had this epiphany the other day because I remembered this time last year, we were at the lake house, and I've talked to you on so many episodes about that and what that looked like. So if you haven't heard that story about the lake house, that's when we had our most horrible breakup. So go back and listen to previous episodes. That is definitely going to come up. I use that as a point of reference because so much changed in our relationship from that pivot point of really going through that really hard time of hitting rock bottom and realizing something needs to change. We cannot continue like this. We are literally, hurting each other to the point of, my partner's existence was being questioned. It was very, very bad. And so when I thought about that time, I remembered, seasonal depression is normally in the winter time when it's cold, when it's dark outside a lot, so that you can kind of understand. Well, now we're in spring and my partner is still in this quote unquote slump. And I'm like, wait, this is not seasonal depression. This is just depression. And I recognized it. And I remember in the beginning, it's very hard to try to maintain your own mental health, your own struggle with PMDD, your own balancing act of figuring out what's going to work this month in PMDD, what's not going to work. Like you have to be so super hyper aware of everything. And then when your partner has something going on, it seems like such a burden. It seems like almost more than you can handle, but it's also something that you kind of have to handle because if you don't handle it, you kind of get punished on the back end because then you have to worry about all the guilt that you'll feel, the fact that your partner may not be supporting you in the way that you need for them to support you because they're not at their best. So it's kind of like you're not at your best, your partner's not at their best. And, if you have children, if you have household responsibilities, no one is showing up as their best. And there seems like there's no end in sight. So with PMDD, we have an end in sight, meaning we have our good days. But even during our good days, it can take us a couple of days within that time frame where we're supposed to be feeling good to really recover from everything that we're going through. So our good days, I know at least for me, when I put like everything in perspective, my good days have been few and far in between. I feel like every month I'm getting less and less good days, which is not good. So I know that when you're noticing certain things about your partner, it's easier to just ignore it because you really don't have the strength to address it sometimes, or you feel like maybe time will, make it go away. Or maybe if you make things really, really easy for your partner, take some things off of their plate, even though you're overwhelmed. Maybe if you make it easier for them, then you won't have to address the fact that they're just not themselves. Because it is a big undertaking to really discover what is going on with your partner. I know for me, when I go into PMDD and I notice that my partner is in a slump or going through depression or is in depression, in the past, he has blamed his depression on PMDD, meaning this time last year, he said that the reason why he was so depressed, the reason why he was so unhappy was because I was in PMDD. I wasn't giving him enough attention, affection, love, validation, all the things. So I spent this last year being very aware of that, making sure that he doesn't get back into that dark place and forcing myself to do all the things that I need to do to make sure that his needs are taken care of even when I'm in PMDD, doing things I don't feel like doing. And then comes to find out we're back a year later and he's still in depression. And so I'm like, wait a minute, this is number one, it's not seasonal. Number two, and I want this to like really settle in because when I had this epiphany tonight, actually, I didn't plan on recording this podcast today, but I was like, I have to like get this out while it's really fresh. I had such an epiphany with the fact that my partner's depression has nothing to do with me. And when I came to that realization that I was not the cause of my partner's depression, PMDD was not the cause of my partner's depression. Like there was such a weight that was lifted off of me. But then also there's this like inquisitive part where now I'm questioning everything. So like if it wasn't me, why did he blame everything this time last year on me? Now the old me would have threw that in his face and like tried to like go in on him about the fact that he blamed his depression on me. But I honestly think that my partner doesn't really know what's going on with him himself. I feel like sometimes your partner can be going through a lot of mental health issues and they don't know the cause of it. So they think if you're outwardly saying you have a mental health condition, you have PMDD, they're just tagging it on that. Well, like, oh, well, you must be the cause of why I'm acting like this, or you must be the cause of why I'm not acting like this. PMDD is the problem because we're so open and vocal about it. When we first find out we have PMDD, we're like, oh, I have this thing, I have PMDD, I need to work on it. It's my flaw, it's my shortcoming. We're owning it. And so when anything goes wrong with your partner, they're like, oh, yeah, because of your PMDD, that must be it. Well, my partner has depression and my PMDD is being managed amazingly, miraculously. I've probably suffered the worst, but I've reacted the best over the past year. And that is such a triumph because I've always been in that place, especially over years and years and years of doing the work where I've known the right things to do, but I've not done them. And I don't know if you've ever been in that spot where you kind of know that you need to be a certain way, you know that you need to do certain things, but you still don't do them. And when I really got to that point where I was recognizing, I know the things that I need to do. I know that I need to be a certain way with my PMDD partner. And maybe it'll help his depression. Maybe it won't help his depression, but I just got to a point where I was trying, I think I gave myself a year, and I encourage you to do this too. Sorry, I'm still like, because this is so fresh, this is very unscripted, which the majority of my episodes are, but I'm still like processing. I realize I'm coming down from the aha moment, and I'm still like getting downloads is what I call them, which is like, I get content from my own experience and from experience of working with PMDD partners. And a lot of times I'll like write down notes, or I have like little sticky notes, but today is completely real, raw, unfiltered. I just got this download. I'm working on finalizing my dissertation for my doctorate. So I really don't know when I'm going to have time to record again. So I'm like, let me just get this out. But I want to give you some tools on how to recognize what depression looks like in your PMDD partner. And I also want to give you some really insight on why your PMDD partner may be hiding their depression. Right. So this is number one, asking the question, is your PMDD partner suffering from depression? And then, are they hiding it? Why are they trying to hide it? What is going on in their mind to where they feel like they have to hide it? I know for my PMDD partner, I'm guessing, right? And I haven't really had the conversation, but I will, that it's always easier to pinpoint something on someone else, because my PMDD partner is really like big on accountability. Somebody has to be to blame for everything, right? In order for him to wrap his head around it, even if it's him that is to blame, he is big on taking accountability. Even with himself, he'll beat himself up about certain things, or I should have done better with this and I should have done better with that. But I thought in the past that however my partner felt, I was supposed to feel in order to be in it with them. Over the years, I figured out that's not a thing, because it caused me to suffer in times where I didn't have to suffer. And I realized that if we're both suffering, yes, we both feel horrible. Yes, we're very empathetic of each other's suffering because we're both in it together, but there's no one to pull the other one out if we're both in it. So if your partner's in depression and they're pulling you down, and you're in PMDD and you're very susceptible to depression, like that was another thing. It's a big trigger for me to be in PMDD while my partner's going through depression, because it's like I'm trying really hard to fight the depression on my end. I'm trying to fight the PMDD depression, but then my partner has his own set of depression. And so it's so easy to just lean into that and just being like, yeah, things are miserable, because in the past, where my partner has encouraged me and kind of helps me dig myself out of depression, he's no longer doing that. He's feeding my depression monster. So if I'm trying to kill this monster by ignoring it, by not really feeding into it, by doing other things, but then he's saying things that are like igniting the depression inside of me, number one, it could cause you to feel a sense of resentment. And this is where the PMDD monthly breakups can come in, because you can be like, listen, it's taken a lot for me to not be in this negative place. And you not only are you not helping me dig myself out of this depression, but you're also feeding that monster and making me feel even more depressed. Meaning, if I say something slightly depressing, you're like, oh yeah, that does suck, like that, and then you're elaborating on it. So you have to be very careful of anyone especially when you're dealing with depression, who feeds that monster, because when you feed it, it grows. I say you need to starve it. That's my way of getting rid of the depression. Is I distract myself. I do other things. I think about positive things. I try to not go deep into the depression, because you start to tell yourself stories of things, of not just about yourself, but about your PMDD partner, about your PMDD relationship. And next thing you know, you'll be ready to pack your bags. So I have to be very careful with how I manage PMDD depression. So if my partner has it, and instead of helping me, reassuring me, all of these things, he's feeding into it, I realized that he was doing that because it's almost like he wanted me to be in that same place with him. I've had a lot of hard things go on with me the last couple of months. I haven't even disclosed one third. I don't do math. Let me stop trying to give a fraction. I haven't disclosed a lot of what I've gone through. I've only disclosed some of it because I don't want it to be so overwhelming and triggering for you. I'm gonna disclose it all, but I try to do it in bite-sized pieces because if I sat here on one episode and told you all of the chaos that's going on in my life on a day-to-day basis, you would be like totally overwhelmed, borderline triggered. You wouldn't feel good about yourself. So I don't want to dump that on you, but I've had a lot of things to be depressed about. And I've worked really hard, really, really hard to not to combat, to not to feed into that PMDD depression monster, because depression is the opposite of anxiety. So I also suffer with PMDD anxiety, but depression is a whole different beast. It is a weighted blanket on you. You feel so low. You feel so burdened. You feel so overwhelmed. You feel so weak. You feel so fatigued and lethargic. You feel like you can't do anything. And I know that once you fully immerse yourself in it, like it's like dumping. It's like jumping in a pool with like a big, like heavy clothes on you, and you're trying to get out of the pool, but there's so many things weighted on you. Like it's so much weight with the water, and then all the clothes have absorbed the water, and you're trying to get out, and then you finally get out, but you're walking around with this weight. That's how depression feels. When I used to have it and I wake up in the morning, I'm like in a fog, in a daze. It's like the episode of The Walking Dead. Like I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to brush my teeth. I actually don't want to put pants on. Like I don't want to walk my dog. Like there's so many things that I have to do that are so minimal. But when I'm in that PMDD depression, everything is so hard. And I feel like I'm moving in slow motion and everything is doom and gloom. It's like a cloud is over my head. Everything goes wrong. I see the worst in everything. I see the worst in everyone. I feel completely like the victim. I feel like, woe is me. I feel like this horrible person. I feel like I want to ask for help, but I don't deserve to ask for help. I just have to do it myself, but I don't feel like I could do it myself. Like there's all of these depressing thoughts around PMDD depression. And so when I fight myself out of getting deep into that hole, and then I see my partner in it, that's another way that you can spot if your partner is in depression or is depressed, is you know what it feels like from having PMDD. So you can start to see those signs and see like, wait a minute, this is going on for a minute, or there's a pattern of this, or, I'm going to give you some tips on how to spot the hidden depression in your PMDD partner, but I want you to first think about what that looks like for you. So depression is not always easy to spot in your PMDD partner because they may be hiding it on purpose. I know when I did the bulk of my interviews for my dissertation, a lot of the PMDD partners were saying that they were hiding their depression, their anxiety, all of the things that they were going through because they felt like my partner is going through so much. Why would I put extra on them by telling them how I'm feeling? They really minimized how they were feeling because they knew that we as PMDD sufferers were already suffering. So why would they mention that? They just felt like I just need to suck it up. Like it's almost like this theory of, if I don't address it, if I don't talk about it, if I don't, make it known to my partner, then maybe it'll go away, which it never does. Depression never goes away by not talking about it and all those things. But the bulk of my research that I've actually done with PMDD partners is they feel like they don't want to bring up their mental health because we're already suffering. It almost feels bad. It's like we're suffering, crying, balled up in a corner, and then your partner comes and dumps everything on you. So my partner is a special breed because he is very communicative. He doesn't have the ability, you know, that phrase, like, you can't hold water. Like, my partner doesn't have the ability to keep his emotions to himself. It's one of the things that I love about him, because I never have to wonder how he's feeling. But then also it can be really overwhelming when I'm in my avoidance state. And if you listen to past episodes, we talked about that. But anything my partner's feeling, good, bad, or indifferent, he is very communicative. So what's been going on is I've taken this past year and I've really fought past leaning into depression. Fought past Anxiety is a whole nother episode I'll do on that. That is way harder for me personally, to fight than depression, because I feel like I feel like it's in my body. Like, I hold a lot of depression, or not anxiety in my body, where it's like this nervous energy, like, and I have to do stuff to get out of it. And I will do an episode on that and give you the tools that I've been using, that my clients have been using, that's been working. But as far as depression is concerned, I immediately get a negative thought. I immediately look at something on Netflix and I feel it trigger me into going into depression, and I immediately have to make a pivot. I can't even allow myself to sit in it for longer than like 60 seconds, because then I start telling myself stories about it. So I shift myself, and I have a ritual or a couple rituals that I do depending on the time of the day, my location, all the things. Music is really, really huge for me when it comes to getting out of my head. I call it getting out of my head. um Changing the narrative, changing the station, right? Old school, you know how you have those radios in old school where it's like you turn the dial and then it's like just like all this static until you get to another station. That's literally what you have to do with depression, because if you do not turn that station, if you keep that station on that is telling you all the things that are wrong with your life, all the, for me, I go all the way back to childhood trauma. And why did your parents abandon you? Why did they do this? Why did they abuse you? Like, what kind of person do they think that you are? Maybe you are that person that they think that you are. Like, there were so many things, and I went down that rabbit hole, and I would feel so horrible about myself. Um, and then I would come out of it, and then I would start to look at my partner, and I would almost want him to cure me from it. Like, you should be making me feel better. But the depression was literally inside of me. So I've done the work over this last year, especially with being really busy with finishing up my doctorate. And I just, like, it's like I don't even have the time to allow myself to go into that mode. This has been the best year in the In Love with PMDD business. I now have clients in over 54 countries. I am working around the clock with my PMDD partners' private sessions. And I've just really poured all of my excess energy into serving PMDD partners, where my PMDD partner 2-month private sessions are open right now. So if you haven't gotten a spot, you need to go grab that right now. Go to my website, www.inlovewithpmdd.com, and go grab your spot for those sessions. But the testimonials that I've gotten are so amazing. And I think that's been so rewarding for me, is to just see the transformation from my clients spending 2 months with them, 3 months. A lot of my PMDD private partners, they have renewed their sessions. So they went from the 2 month, which I always suggest, because it's like the foundation where I'm getting to know you, I'm getting to know your partner, whether your partner is on the session or not. And we're really talking about what are the foundational issues in your PMDD relationship. And then I'm starting to give you tools, you're implementing them. And then after that, you can decide if you want to work with me on a monthly basis, based off of my availability, of course. But then you can decide if you want to do month to month. And because what the monthly sessions do is they allow you to not go backwards. It allows you to, like, keep working on your PMDD relationship. So I just want to share, before we move forward, I just want to share one of the testimonials from one of my most recent clients that has worked with me on my PMDD Partners private sessions. And she said, in just 2 months, Rose has helped me reframe years of limiting beliefs and breaking argumentative cycles in my PMDD relationships. The tools that Rose provided gave me relief from my psychological PMDD symptoms, and she shared strategies to help during stressful times in the future. It has been so refreshing to talk to someone who knows what PMDD is like, and it has made all the difference in my journey. Thank you more than words can express. And I've gotten messages like this, and it's just so rewarding because I know what it feels like to not have that help. And then I know what it feels like to finally get somebody that understands exactly what PMDD is, and you're not spending half the session trying to explain what your symptoms are. There's been so many times where I've pretty much finished my PMDD partners, like my clients' sentences, because I'm like, oh, you mean this? And they're like, yes, how do you know? And I'm like, because you know, I suffer with the same thing. I think the same things. And being that I have a partner with an anxious attachment style, I have an avoidant attachment style, I strongly believe I have the insight of both the PMDD sufferer, the one who's suffering with PMDD, and the partner. So when I've gone through this last year and I've really poured myself into my dissertation, poured myself into my clients, poured myself into my growth in my own PMDD relationship, to making sure that I don't do any more damage, or the damage that I do is rectified in the right way, it's made it very evident when my partner has gone through not PMDD, but my partner has gone through depression in a sense of I see some of the things in him that I was going through. And so I was fighting through it and I wasn't really having those depressive symptoms. But then I was like, wait a minute. I see some of those same things that I'm fighting. I see it in my partner, but my partner didn't really come out and say, like I'm in depression. And sometimes I feel like your partner doesn't know what's going on. I really believe they think that they're just doing their best and they don't know. They either don't know what's going on or they're trying to intentionally hide it. Like I told you, my research was showing. But why do PMDD partners hide their depression? Let's talk about that first. It is easier to hide the issues that your partner has rather than to deal with them. Because if they know that you have things going on, they don't want to put extra on your plate, it's easier to just hide them and think that they could handle it on their own. So people, with depression, they hide it because they're scared and they don't want others to know what's happening to them. There is kind of this ego thing where if your partner is trying to be that person, that partner for you that you can lean on, but then they tell you, I'm going through depression, they're maybe going to look like, oh, well, why would I, as a PMDD sufferer, why would I lean on you? You got your own things going on. Right. So there's this embarrassment of not being that strong, supportive PMDD partner where they're able to be that rock, that person that you lean on. And so it's also like a stigma. Like depression is really a stigma that people feel sorry for them. And it's like this big thing. And they know what depression looks like in you with having PMDD. And they're like, no, that's not me. Like they almost don't want to be associated with it, or they think that they're, a lot of PMDD partners think they're superior as far as getting any of these symptoms. Like I don't have a disorder, so why would I be depressed? Like, what's my excuse? I don't have PMDD. And it's like they almost think that they have to have some kind of disorder in order to give them permission to have depression themselves. So that's the second thing is your PMDD partner may decide to overcompensate as a way of hiding their depression. This may look like they're being more outgoing than usual. They may act really busy, like they have a lot on their plate. They may be juggling a lot of things. They may be acting like they can be there for you and there for work and there for the kids and there for their friends. And they're just keeping themselves busy and on autopilot and not really slowing down. But this is a way of overcompensating so that they don't have the time to really check in with themselves. They're so disconnected with how they're truly feeling emotionally And this is just a coping mechanism with hiding their depression. So that on the outside, you can be like, oh no, they couldn't possibly be depressed because they're doing this and they're doing that. But it's like, yeah, they're doing all these things, but at what cost? And so studies have shown, which I've researched, that PMDD partners try to hide their depression, can force themselves to be more outgoing, force themselves to have fake smiles and fake joy. And they're just trying to keep their issues undercover so that you think that they're fine, so that you continue to depend on them, so that you don't start to feel like you're alone because you feel like you have to keep it to yourself. Because then you have two people, like we already as PMDD sufferers, we don't feel like we want to dump everything on our partners because sometimes we feel like bad for it. We feel really bad. Like sometimes I felt like I wanted to keep my PMDD symptoms to myself. So I haven't really, told my partner the extent of what I'm feeling for another fact of like, if I'm feeling avoidant and I know that there's nothing that he can do to make me feel better anyway, then I kind of keep it to myself. So this is like something that even I do. I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. The next thing is they can have issues with food. So I know my PMDD partner is presently going through this right now. He is going through a phase where he has gained weight because he says his body's not processing food the way it used to before. As you get older, things change. But I've literally seen him, he does a lot of overeating, right? Overcompensating. Every day is a cheat day. We're celebrating this and we're celebrating that. And he kind of sabotages his nutrition journey, like because he'll be like, oh, I'm gonna, like, there's so many diets out there. And I feel like when you have depression, the diets can become out of control because you're trying to hide your depression. Like, say if you overeat and then you feel like forced to go on this diet to where you're restricting yourself because you binge eaten all of these snacks. And then there's this like weird cycle of like binge eating and then not eating, binge eating and then not eating. And then it's just none of it is healthy. So one of the things that you can notice if your PMDD partner is experiencing depression, has their diet changed? Food can serve as an emotional trigger. I know this is really big for my PMDD partner. He loves to eat as like a happy thing, like it's a happy. So if you think about this, my PMDD partner thinks of sitting around a table and eating pretty much like the Last Supper, with Jesus and the disciples. Like he thinks of it as the sacred kind of thing. And like, if I sit with you, I'm bonding with you, like it's all of the things. And when he's feeling depressed, his mind is automatically going to something that is happy. And happy for him is food. So they can use it. Your PMDD partner can use it to make themselves feel better, but it can end up making them feel worse because my PMDD partner feels better in the moment after he's had like a really big meal and he's eaten and he's satisfied. But then there's the guilt that comes after it because then he knows he's overeaten. Then he doesn't like the way his clothes fit. Then he's feeling overweight. And then he's feeling like worse about himself. Then the self-worth comes, the decrease in the self-worth. Then if he starts feeling bad about himself, then we're going into jealousy, insecurities, questioning me. Then we're really going into all of these things. Like it literally pours directly into the relationship. Like it's crazy how just the way your partner eats in their relationship with food, how it can literally translate all the way into how they treat you. Did you see how that worked? Like I said, my partner overeats. Like I'm not even in the equation. When I say my partner overeats, I don't mean we're overeating together. He'll overeat by himself and call it a celebration because, there's always these excuses of I deserve it because I did whatever. Like you can pick anything. If you want to do something, you can find a reason to do it, right? Like I figured that out from even just being a doctoral student. If I want to research something, if I want to research something, I can find somebody in the research that agrees with me. And then later on, if I want to change my mind, I can find someone who disagrees with that. Like, if you want to overeat, you can create an occasion to overeat. There's literally one like every month. Like, there's like Cinco de Mayo, there's St. Patrick's Day, there's like Memorial Day, there is Labor Day. Like, there's so many, there's birthdays, anniversaries. Like, you can find a way to binge food, right? But like, how does it make you feel afterwards? Now, if you're a person that really doesn't care about how they look, which, it is what it is. If that's not a priority for you, then that's not going to be a trigger for your depression. But I know for my PMDD partner, when he gains weight, oh my goodness. And I don't mean a lot. I mean, when he's used to being a certain, like, he's a Marine, he's in the military, he's used to being a certain weight, frame, all of the things. When he is outside of that, the depression comes on heavy because it is just negative self-talk that comes into his mind, basically telling him that he's a piece of crap, you're lazy, blah, blah, blah. Like, but again, when he's in that moment of eating the food that he wants to eat, because it's like he's trying to get to that happy place to get out of the depression, he's not thinking about how he's going to look the next day. Because as you get older, like, your body is very responsive to the things, well, certain people's bodies. I'm a personal trainer, so I can like go all the way into that, like what type of body types respond immediately, what times are prolonged, all the things. But my PMDD partner's body is very reactive. If he does good, if he eats good, if his nutrition is on point, he's pretty good. He stays within the realm of a comfortable weight, for him and what he looks like. And it's not even more of a number on the scale, it's more of a how his clothes fit. So like, if your clothes start fitting differently, like for a lot of individuals, like PMDD partners, like you start to feel some type of way about yourself. And for my PMDD partner, if he's not feeling confident in his body, then he starts to feel jealous and insecure in our relationship. And that causes so many problems. And that's why not only do I have my morning routine, but I encourage him to have his morning routine, which is one of the things that he is just stopped. I even said it this week. Like, I think I just got to the epiphany of like, we used to be so in sync with our morning routines. Like, for me, I am like the queen of consistency. So like, if I start to adopt something into my routine, like I'm going to do it whether I feel like it or not. Like, that's just ingrained in me. So my morning routine, it helps me to do the things that I need to do, not only for myself, but for my clients, for my content that I provide for you, even doing the podcast. Like, I being on Instagram every single day, like 365 days of the year, I couldn't do that without my morning routine. So when my partner starts to feel horrible in his body, he starts to get really insecure, and I don't like the questioning, and it's horrible. So that's one way. If you notice that your partner is getting jealous and insecure, or if they're just complaining about their weight a lot or like how they look or something like that, that could be a sign that they're in depression. The next sign is they have angry outbursts. Unfortunately, my PMDD partner has this as well. I feel like I was going down the list. I was like, yep, 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 yep. Like, my PMDD partner definitely is in depression because he has all the signs of all of these things. But yeah, the next thing is the angry outbursts. Those are a trigger for me, but my partner definitely gets them. He even had one the other day, and that's how I knew that he was in depression, even though it wasn't, that's how I figured out it wasn't seasonal depression, because I had asked him some questions about some logistics about our visit. I'm like, hey, we need to get an Airbnb instead of just a hotel, because number one, our daughter's a teenager now. She needs her own space. Like, back in the day, like when I mean back in the day, like 1 or 2 years ago, we used to be able to get it. Like, when we went on vacation, we could just get one hotel room with 2 beds, and my daughter would be in one bed, and then we would be in another bed, and that would be fine. And then our dog would be in there. But now that she's a teenager, she's gone through puberty, all the things, she needs her space. So we have been in love with Airbnbs. And then I also own a timeshare. So like, everything is where everyone has their own space. Everyone has their own, it's like a home away from home. And so when he had told me he had got a hotel for this trip that we have coming up, I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. We need to get an Airbnb, and this is why. And moving forward in the future, like, let's just not book hotels unless it's just the two of us. But then also, if we book a hotel with just the two of us, I also need the hotel to have like that living room area, because when my partner snores, I need to have a place to go so where I can actually get some sleep, because it's like borderline unbearable. And then I can't like sleep, and then it's a bad day for everyone. So um we talked about that. So I was just giving him the details on that, like, hey, I understand you booked the hotel, but we're like, we need an Airbnb. So then he gets an attitude with me, aka angry outbursts because of depression. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry that this whole thing has just gotten so frustrated with all of us and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I guess I'm just a horrible person. And he really beats himself up a lot. I know he's an overthinker. Like that's just a thing. He catastrophizes, which I'll do an episode on that if you don't know what that is. But it's basically spiraling, where you go worst case scenario, where if I say, hey, you have something on your shirt, and then you're like, oh, I guess this whole shirt is crap, I knew I shouldn't have wore it, and like you just go full on, and then the other person's like, wait, what? So that's what he did. He had this angry outburst, and he tried to pull me into it. I'm sorry that we're frustrated, and I guess I just can't do anything right. I can't get anything wrong. I guess I'm just the bad guy. You know, that's his term. That's a lot of my PMDD partners' terms, the bad guy, where it's like no one wants to be the bad guy. I get it, but like, oh my goodness. So I was like, here's the way I combated that, because I was not in that place of really feeding into it. I was kind of like, babe, I love you. We're all good. I'm not angry. I'm not frustrated. I'm just trying to have clear communication. So, the best thing that you can do if your PMDD partner who is suffering with depression, the best thing you can do is to be calm and rational when they have the angry outbursts, because the old me would have been like, who and who do you think you're talking to, chicken nugget? Like, you're not going to talk to me like that. And like, how dare you? Like, I'm trying to communicate with you, and you're like, I would have gotten so offended. I would have gotten so in the ego. I would have gotten straight into PMDD rage. That would have been like a one person ticket to PMDD rage. Like, I would have went off. But instead, when I was calm, and so this is how I handle the situation, and this is what I would, suggest for you to do. Your PMDD partner goes off, right? And, this angry outburst, instead of countering their anger with more anger and offense and how dare you, just saying, no, 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 it's not that way. Number one, I had to affirm that I loved him, because I truly believe when they have that anger outburst, they feel horrible, right? They feel like they don't deserve, you, or like they did something wrong. Like, it's very catastrophizing. And so I started off with, babe, I love you. I'm just trying to, like, so first say you love them, you care about them, like whatever it is, you have to validate that you're not in a place of shaming them. And then you can go into, this is all I was saying. And then you say, and then you finalize it with, we're all good. I literally was like, we're all good. Like, don't worry about it. We're good. I'm just letting you know. Like, these are the things that have to go on in order for us to have a good time. Like, but we're all good. And then immediately change the subject. Like, I started talking, I don't know, I started talking about, hey, have you talked to so-and-so? Like, it was something else that we needed to talk about, but I immediately went into another conversation so that he wouldn't stew on that. Because if I would have stayed in that, and you don't want to beat a dead horse, because then it just makes them think about it even worse. So I immediately went into like talking about something else, and then we ended up digging ourselves out of that. So the next sign that your PMDD partner has depression is their sleep patterns change. So insomnia is something that I get every single month when I go into PMDD. I have just chosen to use it to my advantage, which I did the other night. I know that the week before my cycle, sleep is just not a thing. So I started to be really productive by doing a lot of things. getting a lot of things done. I wrote like, oh my gosh, so many pages of my dissertation because I was like, well, I'm gonna be up. Might as well be productive. Like I don't like no scrolling your phone and get down that rabbit hole of going onto PMDD forums and commenting and hearing about how horrible everyone feels. That's like the worst thing you can do when you have insomnia because it's like you're definitely not going to sleep now. But sleep patterns can change for no reason, but it may be a sign of a deeper issue. So, this can come from your PMDD partner sleeping too much or sleeping too little. They may start to complain about not getting enough sleep, or they may like refuse to go to bed. So, sleep is so, oh my God, insomnia is studies have shown that insomnia is linked to depression, point blank, period. But when I don't get sleep, when my partner doesn't get sleep, when individuals don't get sleep, when your PMD partner doesn't get sleep, everything is more erratic. You're super hypersensitive to everything your partner says. You're cranky, you're irritable, you're more likely to go off and say things that you don't mean. So if you notice that your PMDD partner, like they're not getting enough sleep, that's going to lead them to say and do things out of character. So in that sense, they need to like get the sleep, whether that's going to sleep earlier, creating a better environment for getting sleep, like making sure you're not on the electronics. That's what they say. It's pretty sure it's true that you like shouldn't experience a lot of electronics before you go to bed. But sorry, my daughter's coming in. Yes. Sorry. So so yeah, that is insomnia is very much linked to depression. And you're really, when if you notice that your partner is complaining about sleep, this is going to lead into the next thing, which is, they turn to addiction. What that can look like is if they can't sleep and they start taking, I'm going to take a melatonin, once or twice taking a melatonin, not a big deal. If they become addicted to sleeping aids in order to get the sleep that they need, that is an additional problem. So now we're talking about they're not being able to sleep. They may think, okay, there's one or two ways or a couple of ways that they can deal with this. They can use food, like I'm going to eat this really big meal, or I'm going to eat a whole bunch of junk food and then I'm going to go to sleep. Or I'm going to do some kind of drug and then I'm going to go to sleep. Or I'm going to drink a whole bunch of alcohol, then I'm going to go to sleep. Addiction can come to not even just in regards to sleeping. It may be their coping mechanism for handling, the depression that they're going through. They think that the alcohol is going to make them better. They don't want to think about the fact that they're not feeling good. So they drink alcohol to kind of numb them. The individuals that do this are doing it because they're trying to not address feeling the depression. And they feel like these things, food, drugs, alcohol, or other things, gambling, pornography, all of these things are just numbing them and taking them away from dealing with whatever it is that they have to deal with. So risky behavior like this is an issue for people who suffer from depression, because if you can spot this behavior early, you can get them help. But what I want to let you know is if you're noticing any of these things that we've just talked about in your PMDD partner, this is a cry for help, because these are things that are not normally going on with your PMDD partner. And they're literally like, you're the person that sees it. No one else sees your PMDD partner the way that you do. And if you don't address it, and I know sometimes it's so tricky. I've had some of my PMDD partners in our private sessions where they've addressed certain addictions and things that they've had going on because they just didn't feel like they could do it by themselves. And this is why I encourage my private sessions, because just because you don't have the courage or the comfortability, you don't feel comfortable talking about what you see going on with your partner, doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be addressed. So I am there to mediate and kind of bring things up in a safe place that we can actually talk about, and I can give you tools about. There's no shaming. everyone knows who's been on a private PMDD partner session with me. It is, I don't know for all of my listeners in 54 countries what you assume working with me is like, but I want to tell you that once you have just one session with me, and I've had a lot of clients tell me that they thought it was going to be this one way, and then they got on and they were so comfortable and they felt like they could just, talk about anything, and they didn't feel judged and they didn't feel overwhelmed and all of these things. I just want you to know that if you're on the fence about working with me because you feel like it's going to be like this big thing, it is very comfortable. Just like you can feel comfortable listening to these episodes, it's the same way talking to me, working with me privately. Like, I'm very much the same, it's just we get to know each other a lot better. And I love my private clients, but it's just a deeper relationship, and it's not something that you have to feel overwhelmed about. You don't have to like get dressed up. That's the beauty of all of my sessions being online. I have some people that have sessions. I have private PMDD partners that have sessions in their car. I have some that have them in their bed or on the couch, or wherever you are, I'm there with you. I don't know if you can hear my dog licking in the background, but yeah, so don't worry about that. If that's something that you've been like a little bit like, I don't know what it's going to be like it's totally cool. But another sign that your PMDD partner has depression is they hide their feelings by having really busy schedules. So when they're having really busy schedules, this is kind of like they are doing one thing and another thing and another thing, and they're really just not taking the time to slow down, to check in, all of these things. And they're just kind of going through the motions. They're not really thinking clearly about what's going on with them. They're just like, I have to do this and I have to do this. So it's really common for PMDD partners who are hiding their depression to fill up their day with like a lot of activities. They're trying to keep themselves busy to stop thinking about the PMDD depression, or like not the PMDD depression, but the depression. And it also keeps other people from questioning them, because you kind of think if you're able to do all of these things, you couldn't possibly have depression because you're doing so many things. But I don't want you to assume that because your PMDD partner is doing a lot that they don't have depression. Sometimes it's just they're trying to use that to mask what they actually have going on. So a busy schedule actually prevents them from having to deal with their emotions. So they just want to pile on more and more activities and more things to do. And they may start taking on new projects, so if you notice your PMDD your PMDD partner always has stuff going on, then and they're not really taking the time to deal with their own emotions, it's probably because they're trying to avoid going through that depression. And the last sign that your partner may be going through depression is they have trouble thinking clearly. So we as PMDD sufferers know we have brain fog. Clearly, I'm in PMDD, so there's that. We're used to having brain fog. We're used to feeling confused. We're used to feeling jumbled and all of the things. But if you notice that in your partner, then this may be a sign that they're going through depression, because PMDD partners who suffer from depression can make bad decisions or refuse to reach any decision at all, or they have trouble, communicating their thoughts, or they might have trouble focusing on things. So this is something to really think about. How is your partner normally? Are they normally this way? These are all the things that for my PMDD partner, the depression looks very different. And I'm going to close this out with how this looks different. So number one, I'll start from the top of the day. The PMDD partner's morning routine that I do, my partner used to do. We used to send each other text messages or like call each other or send sweaty selfies or whatever, like after we finish our morning routine, and we'd be like, we're going to have a great day or blah, blah. Even if I was deep in PMDD, because that was his way of kind of pouring into me and saying like, I want you to have a good day. So he would fill himself up. He would have the endorphins. He would feel good about himself and his life and all the things. And he would be like, we're going to have a great day. And I would send one back. And so we would both be vibing in that way. When we're like together in person, we would do the same thing. We're kind of like, we high five, like we're very motivational in person. We just kind of vibe on that positive atmosphere in the morning, like setting the tone for the day kind of thing, whatever that looks like for the both of us. And that's not a thing anymore. And it's a very lonely place to be. I told my friend, I told my best friend Angie today, I was like, it feels like me and my PMDD partner started going on a hike, and we went on a hike together. And then before the hike was over, he pretty much turned around and was like, I'm going back, but I'm still on the hike. And then he went back home because I feel like I'm still doing the things. So that's what I want to tell you. If you go back in the story of what I was telling you earlier, when like how I improved from how I was at the lake house, last year, and working on myself, I have not contributed to his depression, but yet he's still depressed. So that means it's not a seasonal depression. It is just that he's depressed. So we had this conversation the other day, and he was complaining about so many things in his life. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And then he was like, I'm depressed. And he literally said it. And I was like, because I was so shocked, because I was like, wait, but it's not the season. Like, because we're in spring, like, seasonal depression is normally in winter. So everything that's been going on with us for the last couple of months, he's finally in the mode where he's not blaming me for his depression. He's taking ownership of it and the only reason, and I want to be very clear on this, the only reason he's taking ownership of his own depression is because I am in a point where I'm not leaning into my depression. So it's kind of like, if you're working on yourself and you're improving, but your partner's not, then it's like they're the oddball out. Like, it's very noticeable. Versus if I was leaning into my depression and he was leaning into his depression, it would be very easy for him to be like, it's because of your PMDD depression that I'm depressed, but because he has nothing to pin it on, now it's just like, wow, it's just really a me thing. Because like I said, my partner's very communicative. He'll admit it. If he's the problem, he'll admit it. And he did. And so that's when I was like, oh my goodness, this whole time I was thinking it was me. And I'm not saying I didn't have any part in like last year or whatever, but I now strongly believe that my PMDD partner has the ability to be depressed no matter what season we're in. And he's definitely in it. And he's just not himself. And I think he's in some way thinking that I can fix it, because he kept saying, oh, when we get together, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I was telling him, I don't want to be the source of you feeling better and coming out of this slump, because I want you to intrinsically within yourself be able to pull yourself out of it, because that's what I have to do every month in PMDD. Like, I caution all of you of making your partner the sole way of you digging yourself out of anxiety, out of depression that is associated with PMDD. Don't make your partner your savior, because if they ever have anything going on, you're not going to get saved, right? So you have to figure it out within yourself. And then after you figure it out within yourself, then whatever your partner does on the side is just extra support. But it's too much pressure to put on your PMDD partner to say, the only way I've gotten out of PMDD depression or depression period is that you've been there for me. Like, that's the only way. It's like, whoa, that's not like, that's too big of a responsibility. And people are human. Our PMDD partners are human. So that's what I'm working with on my PMDD partner right now. And it is giving him the space to dig himself out of it without going to save him. And it's so hard, because part of me, wants to just go and spend time and refill his cup and all the things so he feels better. But then the next time that he feels this depression, If I'm not there, then what? Right. So that's the problem, is that you don't want to allow your partner to become so codependent on you that they can't survive without you. That's a whole nother episode, which I will be doing. But for right now, I want you to listen to this episode. Recognize if you know that your PMDD partner is showing signs of depression, recognizing that you're not the problem, recognizing that PMDD is not the problem. Your partner may be just going through a depression. And I'm giving you some tools of what you can do about it. If you need additional help, go to my website, www.inlovewithpmdd.com, and book private sessions. And it could just be you working through recognizing what your partner's going through and getting tools on how you can best support them. Or it can be the both of you coming to the session and both of you getting tools. Either way, you are not meant to do this alone. I don't expect you to figure this out, right? I don't expect you to be in PMDD, about to have PMDD, coming out of PMDD, and then you have to deal with your partner's depression. Like, that's not a thing. That's too overwhelming. And that's why I'm here. And I tell you this all the time. You're not in this alone. You have the tools. I provide you with so many tools. The PMDD Partners Breakup Proof Journal is amazing for this, because you can literally write out, how you're feeling about your PMDD partner's depression and how it's really impacting you, because you are definitely impacted by your partner's depression. So you need to figure that out and figure out what to do with it. And the best way is to just put it on paper. Have the podcast, you have private sessions with me, you have the PMDD Partners Breakup Proof Academy, where you can really go in there and get lessons on anything that you're going through, that your PMDD partner is going through. So utilize these tools. Don't feel like you have to do it by yourself. We got this. I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is, if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD rage and all of these things, so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship, so you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.